Part 1.
You will hear a telephone conversation between a student and an assistant in a job agency. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Good afternoon, Wright's Employment Agency. How can I help you?
Oh, hello. I'm calling to register with the agency. I'm looking for work.
Have you registered with us before?
No, this is my first time.
Okay, so shall we start by taking down some details? Can I have your name, please?
Yes, it's Helen Shepherd. That's S-H-E-P-A-R-D.
S-H-E-P-E-R-D.
No, A-R-D.
Oh, sorry. Okay, I've got that. And your address?
18 Henley Street.
Is that in Milltown?
Yes. The postcode is MT47HV.
7HB?
No, V.
Okay, I've got that. And I need a contact number.
My mobile is 07945 76674. That's the best number to contact me on.
So, are you interested in full or part-time work?
Well, I will be looking for a part-time job in a couple of months when I start university, but at the moment I'm looking for full-time work. I left school last year and took a gap year before going to university. I'd like to work for the next 2 months and save some money before I go.
What did you do in your gap year?
I did some voluntary work for 6 months, and then for the last 3 months, I've been travelling in Southeast Asia and Australia.
That sounds exciting.
Yes, it was fantastic.
So, I need to take down details of any work experience. You say you did some voluntary work? What did that involve?
I worked at a residential school for disabled children. I really enjoyed it. The children and the rest of the staff were fantastic. My degree course is in health and social care, so it really gave me good experience for that.
Yes, of course. Have you any other experience?
Well, I did a bit of waitressing work when I was at school, and I spent a summer working in the King's Hotel on West Street 2 years ago.
What were you doing there? Waitressing?
No, I was a chambermaid, cleaning the bedrooms.
Oh, yes. I did a bit of that when I was a student. Okay, that all seems fine. You've got some experience, which is good. Just a couple more questions. Do you drive?
Yes, I took my test last year, but I don't have access to a car, so I do rely on public transport.
That shouldn't be a problem. I'll just make a note of it here. No car. And I need to know exactly when you're available and whether you'd be able to do shift work. Early mornings, late nights.
I don't have a problem with early morning shifts. I'd prefer not to do night shifts, though.
And when would you be able to start?
Immediately, if necessary. The sooner the better.
Now answer questions 6 to 10. I'll just check our database to see if we have anything suitable. Let's see. We have some hotel work here. The Highlands. Do you know it?
Is it the one near the Prior's shopping centre?
No, it's just off the ring road on the other side of town, near the leisure centre.
That's quite a distance for me. Is it cleaning work?
Well, I think it's a bit of everything. Some cleaning, some waitressing, and kitchen work. It would be shift work, but nothing later than 10. The hourly rate is £6.75 with meals provided.
That sounds reasonable, but I'd prefer something a little closer to home if possible, as that's a long journey for me.
Well, we also have two positions as carers. The first one is in a residential home for the elderly. It's on Hamilton Terrace, the Cedars Care Home.
Oh, yes, I know where that is. It's only 10 minutes' walk from my house.
Well, that's convenient then. They want someone with experience. I'm not sure if your experience with children would count. I could give the manager a ring and find out.
Do you know what the hours are?
Yes, it says here 5 shifts a week from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., including some weekends. There may also be some evening shifts available. The pay is not as good as the hotel job, only £6.10 an hour.
And the other one?
The other one is an interesting one. It's caring for a disabled lady in her own home in Poplar Street, helping her wash and dress and doing housework and shopping for her, that sort of thing. It's not full-time work, though, just 2 to 3 hours every morning. The pay is good, £6.80 an hour, and transport is provided.
I do like the sound of that, but I really need more hours. I think the care home sounds the most suitable.
We can arrange an interview for you if you like. I'll ring the manager now and find out when he can see you. Are you available this afternoon?
Yes, I'm free all day.
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2.
Part 2.
You are going to hear a talk given by the university sports representative of the student union at a university. First, look at questions 11 to 13.
Good afternoon. My name is Mick Clark and I'm the sports rep from the Students' Union. As well as these talks on the university sports facilities, information will be put up on notice boards all over the campus, so you will definitely all know where to find us. Well, as you have probably realised, the university is spread all over the place, and the sports facilities are, I'm afraid, no different. If you look at the map here on the screen, you'll see we are here on Thames Street, opposite the City Library. If you look down at the bottom of this map, on the right, you'll see Burse Road. On the left of the police station, between the shopping complex and the theatre and the Phoenix Theatre, is the University Sports Complex.
Before the sports representative continues his talk, look at questions 14 to 17.
The complex is arranged over 4 floors, 2 above ground and 2 below. The buildings were just completed last year, funded by an anonymous donor. The swimming pool is on the lower ground floor, and we're very lucky in that a full-sized Olympic pool is to be built by the end of this academic year, along with a new sauna. In addition, there are a number of other facilities, including various courts, and I would strongly advise you to book well in advance if you want to use any of these courts, as they're very much in demand. We have full changing facilities, 3 large halls for aerobics and other classes, 3 squash courts and 2 badminton courts. And 2 other exciting developments in the pipeline are a state-of-the-art gym and an ice skating rink. There are also courts for playing softball and basketball, and there is, of course, a cafeteria which is run by the Students' Union, so the prices are reasonable. A welcome addition is the bar, which is due to open shortly. For outdoor sports, I'm afraid we have to go further afield. The university grounds for rugby, football, hockey and cricket are on the edge of the city centre in the southwest, on the north bank of the river, as you can see from this map. The rowing and canoeing clubs, which are very popular, also run from there. The only bus that goes to the university sports fields directly from here is the 553. No, sorry, it's the 53. It is fortunately very frequent and runs late into the night. The last buses either way are around 12:30. But there is also a minibus service which is pretty frequent and reliable, and the times are posted at the Students' Union office. If you want to join up for any of the clubs, you just have to see the reps on the stalls at the different societies' stalls outside. Anyway, thanks for taking the time to come in and listen, and I wish you every success whether you decide to take up some form of sport.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3.
Part 3.
You will hear a student and her tutor discussing her proposal for a presentation.
Right, Merle. You wanted to see me to get some feedback on your proposal and outline for your presentation. I've had a good look through now, and I've made a few notes about areas I feel you can improve. I must admit, when I first saw the topic you had chosen, I was a little worried.
Really?
Yes, well, it can be difficult to produce something fresh and interesting when you take on a topic like climate change. So much has already been written about it, and, well, it's not exactly original. But I have to say, I like the way you've approached the subject matter.
Thank you. Yes, I know it's a subject that has probably been chosen many times before, and that's why I decided to take a slightly different angle. I decided to base the presentation on an analysis of extreme weather and natural disasters over the last few years. There seems to be plenty of information on the topic, and I'll be able to include lots of visual material, photographs, graphs and so on.
Yes, I really like the idea, and you've produced a clear outline of the main points. Something I am a little concerned about, though, is the order you plan to use them in. I'm not sure it's entirely logical. I think that needs some rethinking.
Yes, I did wonder about that. Do you think the section on natural disasters should come later?
Yes, but that's not the only thing. Look, I've made some notes and suggested a possible order.
Yes, I see what you mean. I did wonder whether I needed to add a section about the recent flooding in parts of Europe.
Well, I think you should definitely mention it, but I'm not sure it needs its own section. What about including it in the introduction? In my opinion, the introduction is the weakest part. It needs much more substance.
Yes, I wasn't sure what to include.
Well, you need to grab your audience's attention at the start. And then you should include some background information on the topic and outline your main points.
And what's the best way of getting their attention?
Well, it could be a surprising or interesting fact, a picture or an anecdote.
Oh, I know. I found some fantastic pictures on the internet of the flooding. If I can find some statistics about it too, would that be a good way to start?
Absolutely. It will show the audience the relevance of your presentation and bring it right up to date. Remember to check the copyright and acknowledge your sources for any visual material you use.
Really? For pictures? I didn't realise I had to.
Yes, you should acknowledge all your sources in your bibliography and on your slides too.
Well, I've already started my bibliography.
Yes, I looked at that.
Is there a problem?
Not exactly. It's good to see you're taking a note of your sources, but there's so many of them, and I'm not sure about the validity of some of these internet sources.
How do you mean?
Well, take this graph you found about rainfall.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't you find a more reliable source? This is taken from someone's blog. You need to make sure all your information is from trusted sources, academic papers, scientific journals, that sort of thing.
OK. And I need to cut the number of entries in my bibliography?
Only include the sources you actually use and refer to in your presentation. I would say no more than about 10 for this assignment.
Now answer questions 26 to 30.
OK, so you're happy with the organisation and content, plenty to work on there. Now, I believe you had some questions about the actual delivery of the presentation.
Yes. Well, it's more the technical side of things, really. I'm not very confident with the equipment, and I've never given a presentation before, so I'm really nervous.
Well, I think the best way to overcome your nerves is by preparing really thoroughly. Make sure you know the subject matter inside out, and that any visual aids and equipment are ready.
Yes, I wanted to ask about that. I'm getting a friend to help me put together the slides. Have you any advice about that?
The one thing I would say is don't put too much information on your slides, just the main points and any relevant visuals.
Mm-hmm.
You want your slides to support what you're saying, and I would also keep the slides themselves very simple, no fancy colours or animation that will distract the audience from what you're saying.
No sound effects, then?
No, definitely not. And what you need to do is practice. You'll feel far more confident if you've run through it a few times with a friend.
My friend is going to listen to me run through it.
On the actual day of the presentation, there are a few important things to remember. First, think about where you stand. It's vital that you position yourself centrally and make eye contact with your whole audience. Don't forget the people sitting at the sides.
Mm-hmm.
If you smile and look friendly, it will make your audience feel relaxed too. And don't fidget and move around too much. It can be very distracting.
What about my slideshow? I'll need to be near the computer to move the slides forward.
Have you thought about using a wireless mouse or keyboard? That will really help. It means you can control the slideshow without having to move or turn your back on the audience every time you change slides.
That's a good idea. I hadn't thought of that.
The other thing to remember is that when we're nervous, we tend to speak more quickly. So make a real effort to speak calmly and clearly so that your audience understands you and doesn't feel rushed.
What about memorising the talk? A friend told me she did that for her presentation, but I don't think she did terribly well.
No, it's not a very good idea. It will make you sound unnatural. And don't read from a prepared speech because that will also affect the delivery and stop you making eye contact. Why don't you try using cue cards? You can include all the main points and any key facts or numbers as a memory aid. It will sound far more natural.
The other thing I'm a little worried about is questions from the audience. Should I answer them immediately or wait till the end?
The best thing to do is tell the audience in the introduction that you will answer their questions at the end of the presentation. That way you won't get any distracting interruptions. If you're not sure about the answer, ask the questioner to repeat the question. That will give you thinking time. You could always direct the question back to the questioner or the audience, asking them what they think.
Great. Oh, thanks for all your advice. It's been really helpful.
No problem. I'm looking forward to your presentation.
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
Part 4.
You're going to hear a lecture delivered by a guest speaker on demographic changes. First, look at questions 31 to 40.
Thank you for inviting me here to speak to you today at your Department of Social Sciences. As I'm sure you already know, the title of my talk, Europe Goes Grey, relates to the marked demographic change which has taken place in Europe since the 1960s. Just a few statistics showing the projected trends will illustrate this. By the year 2029, almost 1 in 4 of the population of the UK will be over the present retirement age of 60 years for women and 65 for men. By the year 2020, Italy, for example, will have both the oldest population, with 23.2% aged 65 and over, and, at the same time, the lowest fertility rate. Furthermore, a 1997 report from the UK Office for National Statistics notes that since 1950, the number of centenarians has increased at the rate of just under 7% a year, faster than for most other age groups, and will continue to do so into the next century. The main reasons for the generally increased lifespan are self-evident. These are simply a better diet, better housing, and above all, the ever-improving standard of health care. The social reasons for the changed demographic profile of Europe, that is, the increasing proportion of the elderly relative to the middle and steadily diminishing young generations, are, of course, the falling birth rate as a result of widespread birth control and the education and increasing participation of women in the workforce. This change raised 2 profound questions, one social and one economic, and it is these that I propose to examine here today. At the end, I intend to share with you a few thoughts on how we can help to make the lives of those in the third age more fulfilling and rewarding. Firstly, we need to recognize that the elderly are not a homogeneous group. They can range from a fit, active and independent 85-year-old to a 65-year-old with rapidly advancing Alzheimer's disease, to a retired 55-year-old with both a dependent parent and still dependent student children. The social aspect I referred to earlier is, of course, the big question: who will care for the elderly? The question is a complex one, and I would like to illustrate this by making a few comparisons with the past. In earlier times, large extended families living in the same area were the norm. This meant the sharing of care for the grandparents' generation was usual. Now, however, the mobility of the population combined with smaller families often means there are, quite simply, no family members to take care of an older person. The breakdown of traditional family structures and the increase in divorce has exacerbated this. The other big question, the economic one, involves the increasing cost of adjustment to this situation, and how the burden of this cost can most equitably be shared between, on the one hand, the elderly and their families, and on the other, the relatively smaller number of people of working age whose tax contributions have to be used to fund pensions and services for an increasingly elderly population, as well as all the other demands on the public purse. The questions raised by this demographic change are exercising governments all over Europe, and there is naturally widespread debate about how best to help financially those who can to remain independent, while supporting those who cannot, and ensuring that they continue a sometimes failing life with dignity. I promise to finish with a few thoughts about how we might come closer to achieving this. More imaginative use is being made of existing property by adapting it for elderly, often less able people, and their needs are now being kept in mind by planners, local authorities and transport providers. But not forgetting the cry, where does the money come from? We need radically to rethink the arrangements for funding pensions and younger people's planning for retirement. Innovative insurance schemes should be developed to assist people in providing for the future, and financial institutions ought to be thinking about these. So I will close by repeating that I believe we should do everything to enable the elderly to live meaningful and rewarding lives. After all, we will be in the same situation all too soon. Thank you, and I would welcome any questions or comments from the floor.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.